Given the easier schedule for Michigan in 2025, you would expect their record projection to go up. You would expect this team to have a better record in 2025. So what will that projection be? Before we get to that, let's look back at the projections from the last 4 seasons. As you can see, again, this was with our projection formula. This was never a prediction. I didn't give predictions here. This is just, again, our projected record formula. So it's in 2021, the projection was 7-5. The record was 11-1. Obviously, Michigan did much, much better. Coming off of a disappointing 2020, I don't think many people expected them to bounce back and have the type of season that they had. That was a really good year, and that kind of kickstarted this 3-year run for the Wolverines. In 2022, projection was 10-2. They went 12-0, so they beat it by 2 games that year. And then in 2023, projection was 11-1. They went 12-0 again. And so in my personal prediction, I did pick Michigan to go undefeated in 2023, and I picked them to win the national championship. So actually, by the way, I've gotten the national champion correct the last 2 years in the preseason. I had Michigan in 23, and I had Ohio State, of course, last year. So 8-4 in 2024 was the projection, and they were actually under that at 7-5. A big part of that was because of the schedule, but the schedule plays into the projection, obviously. So if you look back at the last 4 seasons, 3 of the 4 years they were better than the projection, but last year they were just 1 game below. So I would expect them to probably be close to this projection or do better, again, based off of these numbers. So again, this is the schedule, and this is the scale that we use to do this projection. Games that are in the white, those are going to be your 50-50 games, and this is based off of our tier rankings. So Michigan is in tier 2. So if they play another tier 2 team, obviously that's going to be a 50-50 game. They're in the 40 to 60% range. If they play a team below them, so if they play a tier 3 team, then that will be in the 61 to 70% range. But if that game is on the road, then that becomes a 50-50 game. So that's kind of how it works. Again, just based off of the strength of the schedule, the tiers of all these teams, and then where the games are played. And again, Michigan does have 6 road games against Power 4 opponents. So that will have an impact with this projection. So we'll start with the easier games, pretty much the guaranteed wins. You've got New Mexico, Central Michigan, and Purdue. So as easy as this schedule is, there aren't a whole lot of like cupcake games. There aren't a whole lot of pretty much guaranteed win type games. I'll go ahead and tell you, most teams have more, most tier 1, tier 2 teams have more than 3 games that are pretty much guaranteed wins. And a part of this is you look at Northwestern and Maryland. If those games are at home, those would be in the green. Those would be guaranteed wins pretty much. But because they're on the road, they do drop a little bit. And you'll see they're in the blue. We're talking about Wisconsin, Washington, Northwestern, and Maryland. These are games where Michigan should win. They'll be a clear favorite, but not guaranteed wins. And I do like to sometimes make the comparison with these percentages. It's kind of like looking at the point spreads. The 40 to 60% games are games where the spreads are going to be, 3, 4, 5 points, really low. And then 61 to 70 where it's going to be closer to a touchdown, 7, 8, 9 points. These games in the blue, probably games where the spread is going to be double digits. So I would expect Michigan to be, a 2 touchdown favorite in most of these games. Maybe Wisconsin, Washington closer to 10. Maybe they're all closer to 10. I don't know, because you got Northwestern and Maryland on the road. But again, this formula is not based off of projecting spreads or anything like that. That's just one way to look at it. But yeah, you've got these 4 games, then you got the 3 pretty easy wins. That only leaves 5 games, 5 somewhat tough games for Michigan, and who knows if these games will even be tough. I don't know how good Michigan State and USC are going to be, even Nebraska. Those are definitely teams that are hard to predict at this point. But yeah, when we come back to the projection, like if you look at 4 games in the blue, yeah, they should win all those games, but the odds would tell us they're going to win 3 out of those 4 games. So keep that in mind when we get to the projection. Projection is going to have them losing one of those games, even though they're going to be a pretty big favorite in all 4. So yeah, you got the games of the purple next. You've got Michigan State. That's the only one. So Michigan State, a couple of tiers below Michigan. So they're a tier 4 team, but because it's on the road, that bumps it up to the purple instead of the blue. It's a rivalry game. Now, that does not go into this formula. We don't really put any human element. Don't really look at rivalries or when the games are played. That will come, of course, when we do predictions. But just looking at, again, the formula and where these teams are in the tiers, that's why this one comes out in the purple. Again, rivalry game on the road. I think Michigan will be favored by about a touchdown. So I think the spread concept does work out pretty well here. And then you've got really 4 games that I would say could go either way. I think there will be a favorite in all 4 games. But I don't know that they're toss-ups, but they're close. They're close to that. Oklahoma, I think Michigan's a better team, but that game's on the road. That'll be tough. Same thing with Nebraska. I think Michigan's going to be a better team than Nebraska, and they are in a tier above Oklahoma, Nebraska, and USC. All these teams are tier 3 teams. Michigan, again, is a tier 2 team, but because those games are on the road, that's why they become 50-50 games. Those are really games that could go either way. And then you've got Ohio State. Ohio State's a tier 1 team, but because Michigan is at home, even though they're a tier behind Ohio State, that makes this a 50-50 game. And of course, if you put in the human element here, there's no way I would put Michigan below the 50% range just because of what's happened in this rivalry the last few years. So that leaves 4 games, again, that could go really either way. And then you've got Michigan State. They'll be a decent favorite there. And then 4 games where they should be a pretty big favorite. And then you got the easy wins with New Mexico, Central Michigan, and Purdue. So the math kind of works out. It's kind of easy here. If you've got 4 50-50 games, you're going to split those games. You're going to go 2-2 in those games. And then again, I told you, the odds would say they're going to lose one of these games in the blue, or throw Michigan State in there. They're going to lose one of those 5 games. It's just kind of the way college football works. Michigan, if they have a good season, they should win all those games, and they'll beat this projection. But the projected record is 9-3. So a 9-3 projection for Michigan. A better season than what they had last year, but not quite the playoff type season. Now, again, all they have to do is beat this by 1 game. If they can just get to 10-2, they should be in the college football playoff. And I showed you 3 out of the last 4 years, they have done better than our projected record. So if they can do that, again, by just 1 game, then Michigan is in the college football playoff in 2025. And I think that is definitely a real possibility. I think they do have the schedule. If this Michigan team turns out to be a good team, as good as I think a lot of people expect them to be, this schedule does set up for them to make a run to get back to the college football playoff. So how does that stack up with some of the other teams in the top teams of the Big Ten? So you've got, you see again, Michigan there at 9-3, Oregon, Penn State, and Illinois actually at 10-2. Those are the highest projections. Then Ohio State, Michigan, and Indiana at 9-3. Just again, based off of these schedules, and if the teams are similar to what they were last year, these are your 6 contenders in the Big Ten. Now this goes by the full schedule, the non-conference as well. Illinois has a very favorable schedule. I think they have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. They have a similar conference schedule to Michigan, and they have an easier non-conference schedule. So you could say maybe Ohio State and Michigan, if you're just looking at this calculation, maybe those teams actually have 2 conference losses. Then all of a sudden they're right there in the conversation. So that's why I think Illinois, because of their schedule, they are a real threat. But I don't know. It's hard for me to see Illinois in the Big Ten championship. But yeah, Michigan right there at 9-3. Again, same as Ohio State, and right there among the top contenders in the Big Ten. But just looking at the teams and the schedules, it feels like Oregon and Penn State probably the favorites again, just the way their schedule's set up. But Michigan definitely, theirs gives them a chance to be up there at the top as well.